here, and today I'm going to show you how to make those 4 simple cards using stencils. I will be using Mintay Papers stencils from Kreativa line, and they recently released 10 different patterns, and I will be using 4 of them today. And I also will be using some other Mintay products as well. I'm starting with the Woodgrain pattern, 12 by 12 basic craft cardstock, and a page from basic book number 2. That will be my card base, so I am not making white card bases for this video. I will be using 6 by 8 folded in a half and trimmed a little bit like centimeter or something to make my card bases. I have so many books that I decided it will be great to use up them for card bases. I'm also trimming a piece of 12 by 12 craft cardstock that will go on top of my card base. And for this technique, we will not be using any special mixed media. I am going to show you that you can emboss with your stencil. You can achieve very similar results than with embossing folders. However, the depth of the embossing will be not as deep as with embossing folders. It will be more subtle, but still fantastic effect. I am using Spellbinder's Platinum 6 machine, so you need to adjust the sandwich to your own machine. For me, it's like a sandwich that is recommended by the Spellbinders for embossing folders. Not embossing folders, but for embossing with dies. So this is how it looks. You can still see these embossed lines, but before I will untape the paper, I am applying brown distress ink. It's brushed corduroy from what I remember, but you can use any other brown ink. It's just to highlight those bumps that are wood grains on this card. After I'm done with inking the raised part, I can remove the stencil, and those grain wood areas will be more visible, but I will also add some ink directly on the paper to kind of blend them in a little bit better. Of course, you can do whatever you want. You just can skip inking and use the plain texture paper for more subtle effect. You can go more dark if you wish. This is how I envision this card, so I'm going with this look. So I'm just blending everything a little bit better, and I will be also adding this darker vignette around the page, the base. But before I will do that, I have to make sure that the size is correct, so I need to trim it a little bit. And I'm applying the ink on the edges while I trim off the base out of camera. To save some time and to make this video watchable and not too long. So I'm just adding this darker edges, and I will be ready to glue this to the card base and embellish everything using one of the Mintay collections that is called Woodland. Well, I will not be using any papers, just embellishments from this collection, die cuts in particular. So I'm gluing down the card base and and the base of my composition together, and now I'm ready for embellishing. I'm just picking up some elements to embellish the bottom part. I will not be adding anything on the upper part because I don't want to cover the composition I just created, not the composition, texture I just created. So I'm gluing some things down. Some are glued down flat, some have a layer of foam tape. I just like to have my things dimensional. I don't like flat designs, but if you do, just go with it and do whatever you want. Especially if you are going to mail the card, it's better to keep it as flat as possible. And I'm building the composition with animals, flowers, all the elements you can find in the die cuts pack. But I do not have a proper title for the card, so I will be reaching for a Forever Young collection. It was a birthday theme collection, and it has a set of stickers, the stickers you are seeing right now, with great phrases for any birthday or more generic card, and I will be using it. It's in Polish because Polish are the people I give my cards most often. Now it's time for the second technique. It will be stencils and chalk paints. It's like most obvious one. And I will be using a star stencil, a new chalk paste in a white color from Mintay. It was released in January. And I will be just applying the paste through the stencil. I will be creating a baby card, hence the star stencil, and I will be creating like a girl version, but by changing simply the color of the background, you can create a boy version. Of course, you can use any color for any gender. It's not like the girls or boys has particular colors. I just wanted to make it coral. So the background is ready. It needs to dry and I will leave it to air dry. And don't forget to wash your stencil right away and before the paste will dry, because otherwise it will be hard to clean it. I am using Peach Kreativa paint, and I'm just applying a tiny bit of paint on the spare foil, mixing it with water, and I will be painting my card background using this mixture. I just wanted to dilute it with water, and the paint will kind of work like watercolors. So I just wanted to have this more artsy, whimsical result instead of a very solid orange color. You can also use inks on top of chalk paste. You can leave it like it is because white is also awesome as a background and it gives this very nice texture without adding color. I am using Little One collection, especially this add-on pad, to make a card base because, as I mentioned before, I'm trying to use up as much as possible of those 6x8 books, and this will be my card base. I'm trimming it a little bit to be a 10 by 14 centimeters when it's folded. I don't know if it's any like, standard size, probably not, but it's still kind of card size that I will find envelope easily. And I'm gluing down both the background and the card base. Of course, it's already dry. I dried it with the heat gun, so do not worry. And now I will be arranging the composition using both die cuts from Little One collection and new paper elements that were released for all 4 new collections in January. And I'm building the composition using critters. I will be also adding the leaves from Flora book 1. It's an old book. It's filled with flowers, leaves that you can fussy cut and combine with any Mintay collection. So I'm gluing down the elements to the card base. And as I mentioned, it will be like a girl's version, so I just picked the critters and elements that are in this coral collection color. There are also similar elements in, I would say, maybe sage color, mint color. It's not blue, but also not green, like something in between. So I'm gluing everything down to my card base. Again, I'm not building too big of a composition because I don't want to cover my background. I want this background to be visible because I kind of take time to create it. And I'm adding the leaves, cut it out from the Flora book 1. I'm adding them on top because there are some flowers underneath the elephant. And I'm adding the inscription from Tiny Miracle collection. It had those cardboard stickers in Polish, and I added the inscription in Polish for this card because, as I mentioned before, I mostly give those cards to my Polish friends and family, so it's better for me to use Polish. I added those cute little stars, and this is how the card looks when it's finished. It's very simple and I try to let the background shine. The third card will be created with stencils and Kreativa paints. So I will be using the new Elodie collection, and once again I'm starting with a paper from add-on pack to make my card base. So this is how I started making this card. Before I made a background, I made a card base first, and I'm repeating exactly the same process like with card number 1 and 2. And I will be using a piece of pattern paper from the same pad to apply stencil paint through the stencil. So this time I will be using pattern paper with the stencil, which you can also do. I have this heart stencil, and I will create like a denser pattern on the top and falling hearts on the bottom. And I'm using Peony Kreativa chalk paint. It's a very thick paint, so you can apply it through the stencil and it will look amazing. You will see just in a minute how well it looks. It may seem very, very dark and pinkish, but it will dry much lighter. This is something you have to remember when it comes to Kreativa paints, that when they are wet, they look very dark, but when you dry them, they kind of gain this chalky finish. So this is how it looks. It really, really worked well. I went to wash the stencil. I left everything to dry, and I am ready to work with some elements to create a composition. I decided to add a piece of string in pink and white color on the top of my card, and this will be like a base of the composition. I need to tie a bow, which wasn't easy. Believe me, I kind of had wooden fingers for this. I'm also adding a layer of cardboard because otherwise, if I would glue it flat, the string would kind of create this bulky texture. So I am ready to combine the card base and the card background here. And I'm just gluing everything down. I had so much trouble with my glue, and I had to edit this video so heavily to cut out all my struggles with the clogged glue. So sorry, it kind of it's edited a lot with a lot of cuts, but I didn't want you to see me struggle with the ink. So the card base is ready, and I will be embellishing it with the flowers cut out from the same add-on pack, plus with the die cuts from Elodie collection, like this bird house, some hearts. So you know the main element of the card is ready. I just need to finish it with some bits and pieces. So I'm adding those flowers. Some of them are glued down directly in the background. Some of them are raised a bit using foam squares. You can use stencils with texture paste, chalk paste, but you can also use them with a very dense card. Just act quickly. Do not press the paint or other product into the stencil too much, because otherwise it will start sinking beneath the stencil and it will create those ugly bloops. So just act quickly, apply the product with few strokes of spatula and leave it to dry. You can also use a gel medium if you have one, and then try to foil over it, and it will require like foil that needs some sort of toner to work with paper, not the foil that is used with special dies that press it into paper, not the foil that works with tonal from, let's say, Mink machine. There are probably many other brands too. This is what I have because I have a Mink machine. So you can apply the paste through the stencil, not the paste, the gel medium through the stencil, and then run it through a Mink machine or a laminator using special foil, and it will create this wonderful metallic effects. So you can use any sort of medium with stencils to create a dimensional texture. So for me it was chalk paste, and now it's chalk paint, because as I mentioned, it's quite dense. I am adding some leaves from Flora Book 1. As you can see, this is such a versatile product that I am already using it for the second card, and I will use it in my third card, the last one too. So there are many Flora books in Mintay range, I think 4 already, so there are plenty of flowers to choose from. And I'm using inscription from this inscription sheet. They come in 3 themes, like a birthday, general, and the second one is wedding and love, and the third one is baby. So I choose the generic one, and they come in Polish and English version. So I choose the one from the Polish version. It's not a cardboard, it's printed on regular paper, the same one that they used to make their paper collections, but it's really, really good for cards. You just need to add something under it, like a piece of cardboard, if you want to raise it on the surface. And I'm adding a piece of string, and I will tie it to my composition. So I just need to make a knot and attach it to the existing string. And I really like this kind of composition with sentiment dangling on the card. You can of course glue it down just to make impression it's a loose element, and this is what I will do. I will add a piece of foam tape underneath to add dimension, but to secure this on the background. So me again trying to make a perfect bow. This is how the cards look, and it's almost finished. And I really, really love the effect with chalk paint through the stencil. And our final card and fourth technique will be using stencils with inks and ink blending technique. And I'm using the flower stencil on top of white watercolor paper, and I'm attaching it using repositional tape because I don't want it to move during blending. So my blending will be perfect, and I chose some colors of Distress Oxide inks, pink and yellow, pink and orange and green, and I'm applying those only on the parts where the flowers are. So I'm trying to sort of create pink and orange flowers. It doesn't have to be perfect, and if of course it won't, because I don't have very detailed small sized brushes. I'm just trying to keep it mostly online where the flower is. So I'm just brushing it, creating the colorful composition underneath. And you can, of course, use regular cardstock, not watercolor one, if you want to keep it like it is. I will be adding a little bit of water to make the colors float a bit. So I will be creating this dreamy, whimsical effect. If you don't want to do it, you can use regular inks. They doesn't have to be distress inks or distress oxide inks that react with water. There can be any other inks and any ordinary white cardstock that is good for ink blending and you like to work with it. As I mentioned, I used a piece of watercolor paper, and I'm mixing 2 shades of green on the leaves and branches. And this is what I was planning it to look at first, but then I thought that there is something that looks like berries on the stencil, and I also added the red color here and there to kind of make it a little bit darker. Remember, when you are blending like I am, some colors will mix together, so just be careful with using colors that do not blend well together, because otherwise you will get this brownish muddy color. So just be aware of how the colors blend together, especially if you are blending elements that are so close that you may be more than sure that the colors will blend on top of the stencil. You can try to wipe the stencil after each color is blended, and it will prevent colors from mixing that much if you want to. So my job is finished here. I can reveal the pattern. It looks beautiful, and it will look wonderful with white chalk paste, very soft, delicate, and romantic. And now I'm spraying everything with water very gently. I don't want to flood it with the even layer of water. I just want to create sort of blobs to start the colors to float, but not to float completely. So I don't want them to create puddles, just just a little bit. So this is how it looks when it's dry. And I'm using another basic book. This is basic book number 3 with rainbow cardstock, and I will be creating the 4th card base using it. Um, Again, it's 10 by 14 centimeters. I chose pink because it will contrast well with my card base. The card base is a little bit bigger than the card background is a little bit bigger than the card base, so I needed to trim it down, and I am ready to glue it with the card base. And the background is quite busy, so I will be creating very minimalistic card with this background, adding only smaller flowers on the bottom. And once again, I reached for our Flora book number 1 and from stickers from Forever Young collection. I have those few flowers, pink and yellow. I think those are peonies. And I'm creating a small composition of flowers on the bottom of the card. I'm gluing them down using glue and foam squares, adding leaves, and I will be adding my card title in the middle. And this is it. This is the card finished. And I hope you learned some new tricks with me about using stencils. Of course, those techniques can be applied to layouts, album, whatever you want. Thank you so much for staying with me, and see you on some other video. In the meantime, you can subscribe to my channel for more crafty fun, and here are some other videos you may like and you may want to watch. Thank you so much, and see you soon on some other video. Bye!